Welcome to It's a Simple podcast, where we ask one simple question and have one drink. Our moderator is Christina Downey. To my left is John Galeka, and to my right is Matthew Newman, who's our special guest, and he is the Chief Commercial Officer of the fastest growing low-carb pasta company in the country.
Welcome, everyone. Have a drink.
Cheers.
The moment we've been waiting for.
All right. So unfortunately, or fortunately, we're not going to talk about bourbon today. But since we have a commercial officer, and I know kind of all your backgrounds, so my one simple question right now, ready? Data versus gut. Where do you rely and where do you move from one to the other?
Data versus gut.
Both important.
I like data.
I know you do. Do you lead with it always? Is it exclusive?
It's not exclusive.
Why?
It is a driver of direction, but quick decisions are made with the gut, I think.
Quick decisions made with the gut.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at a commercial officer who's looking across all those things. I know you live in spreadsheets there, Matt.
Yeah, so I would say the data is super important. It can be a leading and a lagging indicator, but using your gut on some decisions is just as important, right? Like leaning into an alternative pasta that didn't have data to support it, but there was a gut belief that it was going to take off and grow. You have to lean in on what some of that early data shows, but it can't be the driver of every decision that you make.
Yeah, because here's the reality. A lot of times you're not going to have the data to support a decision in full, or the data in full to support a decision. And so at what point do you lean on different sets of data or your gut to move forward?
So I would say the gut is tied to data though, right? Like I use the data to help me
Yeah,
validate my gut feeling more than anything else. Like I believe this is where we're going and I believe this is what's happening. Here's the data that's providing that story to help validate that decision. At the end of the day, the gut is what makes the call. And that's what
health.
%. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think of it this way. You know, Brian, we have a lot of conversations around gut health and the gut being strong. And if your gut's strong, right? And so you have to feed that gut. Data helps feed the gut, right? So that when you have to rely on your gut, you've fed it with a lot of data from different points, not just the current role, but past roles, past experiences. You, however, are creative. So I'm going to point to you.
What?
Data, gut.
But before you answer that question, not interrupt.
Again? Is this last podcast?
Did you just liken gut health to making gut decisions?
I sure did.
I noticed that. I saw what you did there. I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page.
Well,
We talk about feeding your gut all the time.
Yeah.
And I honestly do believe that, to your point of quick decisions and having to have that, and how you have that, the more you've been in the business and the more you've done things, and it can be from different perspectives. It doesn't have to be the same job. And you bring all that in, and if you're feeding that, it enables you to make those better decisions because you have an understanding even if you can't articulate it.
yeah.
Creative.
So creatives, we get a bad rap in the industry for not being data-driven people. But my argument here is that creatives use data more than anybody else, more than any spreadsheet. I mean, how do you bring something to market without completely understanding the world around you on all levels, visually, emotionally, verbally, mathematically? Taking in all those insights is what drives great creative. So I would argue that whether it's may not always be articulated the same way that a traditional data scientist or maker or a person of math would do, we are using data every second of the day to drive every little decision that we make.
Well, I was going to ask,
So come on in here. Let's come on in. Let's take this down.
is it intuitive data?
Is it intuitive data? Define intuitive data.
You're saying you're taking inputs in at all times. Is that intuitive?
I mean, it's both intuitive and it's logical. I'm understanding what's around me in the world to make an informed deciation.
So your definition of data is dynamically different than our definition.
Oh, yeah. Definition of data. His definition of data is gut.
Because for us, data is analytics,
No, I
right?
don't disagree.
So
Yeah.
Data is analytics. It's numbers. It's driven by trends. It's driven by
I
patterns.
think what John is
right?
trying to say is that there's qualitative and quantitative data.
Oh,
fair.
But everything we do creatively is driven by trends, and you can assign a number to it.
Room, my friend,
Yeah.
where someone goes, probably me, here's a funny idea, and someone goes, that's it. That wasn't driven by data. That was driven
How
by
did you get to that funny idea though? You had to
Oh,
understand there was a history, there was a lot of
by
there's a lot of
faster
different
than
data
anyone.
points.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I, I think there are different intuitive data points, right? If everyone in the room agrees that it's funny and nobody doesn't, then you have 100%, accuracy in the data that's funny, right? If one person thinks it's funny and everyone else is like, no, that's stupid, then you're collecting survey data in real time,
Feeding
right?
him. You're
Yeah.
feeding it to him.
Well, because I like what John said, but I think what John said is kind of, I think it's funny because he's talking about different data inputs that drive gut intuition,
Right.
but it's mostly qualitative. He's talking about qualitative data, which is data, but I think there's often a confusion between qualitative data and gut intuition.
So let's talk qualitative,
more.
quantitative.
Yeah.
Where do you put the emphasis? Qualitative versus quantitative?
It's all
On-
data. It's all data.
It's all data. So if two people qualitatively say something, does that trump 100 people quantitatively saying something else?
It sounds like you have 102 data points.
That's not an answer.
Why isn't that an
I'm
answer?
gonna drink to that.
So I think it depends on the outcome you're trying to derive, right? So let's just think about from a brand building perspective. I think and believe that qualitative data will lead you on a creative journey that helps you build the brand. If you're making a decision on SKU addition or SKU reduction or price promotion analysis, quantitative data is what has to lead your decision making. So depends on what direction you're trying to drive, right? We're trying to build a brand, so we have to lean on qualitative. But as we're presenting to customers, we're showing quantitative data. We're not even talking really about the quality of the brand and what we're doing. It's, hey, this is fun, this is what we're doing, but here's the data that shows you why this product needs to be on your shelf. So it's different outputs that derive which trumps which one.
Good point. So I'll give my example. Two people say, I think this product, this variety, who would ever buy it? No one ever buys it. Quantitatively, it's our second selling SKU. So do you go by the qualitative of people you heard, or do you go by the quantitative?
Well, I think at that point, you go by the quantitative, right? That's why I said it's all data.
Or you
So-
fire the moderator
it's all-
because you're only questioning two people.
And so what would you then what would you ask the two people that didn't like it? What would you do to get to better data?
I would ask John what kind of questions I should ask.
That was your first mistake. First mistake.
I would just make a gut decision. Stop looking.
Finish the drinks. My goodness.
You didn't see how much we drank before.
There's the other bottle behind the couch.
So I'm gonna go
The bottle behind the bottle. Did you notice how empty that thing was?
that bottle was
That's a
pretty
data
empty.
point right there.
There's a data
Hold on
point.
here.
Austin Stills.
Drink to-
Good bourbon.
Now was that leading data? Does that data actually mean we drank a lot before just because the bottle was empty? People manipulate data all the time too.
Wait, what? Tell me more. How do people manipulate data?
Well, in this example, we didn't actually drink beforehand. The
Oh,
bottle was empty because of the last time we drank a lot.
this is just a continuation of the last.
Yes.
I want to go back though to a point, and I think Matthew, you made the point, because there are people who could be listening to this podcast who are just starting off, and I think you made a point about sometimes you don't have all the data yet, but retailers are looking for data. So how do you where are the good sources of data that you're using to help make those decisions that will lead to you making better gut decisions? How do you start that?
Yeah, so I mean, if you can afford it, right? Syndicated data is by all means the best solution to help you build your data story. Whether you pay for a monthly subscription or one-time pool or a two-time annual pool, there's ways to get to that data for your category and understanding what's happening within the category. The other things there's Numerator, there's Data Essentials, there's Technomics, there's a ton of data sources out there to help people. But then there's also Google Trends and Meta Trends and all these other things that help you understand what's happening for your specific product or also in the category in which you play. So you don't have to have a robust data budget in order to get to some of the solutions as you're starting off. And then we lean heavy on your broker, right? Like leverage your broker partners and your connections to maybe get some stuff to help you, right? Relationships is a big deal in our industry. I
100.
think in every industry, relationships are a big deal, and leveraging those relationships to get that information.
So, Brian, when I started, I was amazed at how much data you had for being such a company that's so new. Where did you start with getting some of that data? How did you lean into that?
Um, I think it's very dangerous to have a lot of data inputs if you're not using them functionally. And I think Matt was alluding to a few different things when he was talking about how he's using it. I know this is kind of a roundabout way to answer your question, but the place that I started was, what am I trying to validate in the market, or what am I trying to discover based on the data? So I went in initially looking at the competitive set and how we're faring relative to the competitive set. And it was more exploratory in nature. I think it's dangerous to go into data from an exploratory standpoint because you can get lost in it and kind of lose yourself in the music, the moment.
You don't, but you own it.
You can
Just never let it go.
Yeah. No, you could.
Yeah, one chance.
Oh my gosh.
If you blow it, it's one, maybe you won't. Anyway, no, I think you get lost in data, and you can come out with takes from that data that are not necessarily productive, and that could be really damaging. Like if you base the position of something on something that's not necessarily statistically significant, it's just observational data. There's no causation between what you're doing and what's driving the data. So I think it's an iterative process. There's a lot of scientific method in it. So it's an evolution. Like first you got to get in it and you got to see what pools of data you got and what's available to you. Then you got to test things, and then you got to see what responds and create some kind of relationship between your actions in the real world and the data that's showing up. And then I think some of it, to Matt's point, is validating certain actions. Like, okay, we know we're doing X, Y, and Z really well. Based on this, I hypothesize that the data will show whatever. Does it or does it not? And you go in and it does, and then you're trying to create not just like, that's correlation, right? But you need to make sure there's causation. And so I think it's all about how you use it. Not to get super technical.
Why not?
I've already done.
That's not technical.
Well, I would also add to what Brian's talking about, right? Like if you don't have causation behind an event, then that could be extremely dangerous. Like using our own data, we have a significant spike that we're lapping this year versus last year. We know what caused that, but if somebody's just looking at data in a raw, they're going to say, oh, they're on a decline.
Yeah.
Well, we had a massive promotional event that occurred in a singular retailer that drove a significant lift. That we know that, but nobody else might know that.
Right. So context is super important.
Yeah.
Context is super important, which again, context is a data point.
Yeah.
And that's why data as an abstract, you need as complete a picture as you can. The more qualitative, more quantitative data points you have, the more accurate your decision is going to be, or the more accurate your interpretation of whatever you're looking at is going to be.
So, John, you helped us with some new packaging design, and we'll be talking more later in a future podcast about the rebranding. But what data did you use from an agency perspective to help guide that? Because you talked about like we're constantly pulling data.
We just winged it.
You
I was
just
gonna
winged
say
it.
he
Okay,
just
well,
threw
there you
darts at the wall.
No, I think it goes back to, right, like, if I look at, the qualitative and quantitative data together, what are we trying to do to understand what's in front of us? We're looking for patterns in both, and the pattern recognition is what we do a lot in creative as designers, whether that's pattern recognition from trend pools, whether that's pattern recognition from what people are saying, whether that's pattern recognition from
Can you
what
explain
competitors
for
are
some
doing.
of us what you mean by pattern recognition?
Oh, well, from a creative perspective, we're looking at what message is resonating, what colors are resonating, what in a trend pool, where are the bulk of designs trending in the marketplace? How are we doing that, right? We're looking at things visually. We're building libraries of information. We're using our dear friend AI to plug in 20 different designs and say, what are the commonalities across all these things, and we're applying. So yeah, we actually did some of that behind the scenes before then, giving little pieces of that to some creatives to bring in their own context to it. And then finally adding the piece of what we learned from you guys. So all those different data points, from trends to what we learned from you guys to competitive, and dimensionalizing those from, visual, verbal, and different cues, and then letting people bring in their own context to that. Then, right, other data points, right, during the process, which is really important, not to just look at data at the start and at the finish, but to look at it through the entire creative process. Brought in you guys to validate that, steer us, choose, and do different things. So while they're not specific, 0.001, line 252, like you would in that, there's still common patterns that we're looking for.
So for those who don't know, common patterns means, like, for instance, the way people are shopping based on color. Like, that's a common pattern that we see, how people move throughout the grocery store and how they're looking for things, right? We know people shop on color. So how does that inform design strategy? We know different wayfaring pieces and how
Yep.
people are looking for information and how they're flowing through. That's what you mean from the
Yeah, and once we know that too, how do we disrupt that? How do we get people to stop? What decisions do we make? You know, everything's going very flat and simple and beige. Let's disrupt that with a chunk of black.
Yeah.
Let's disrupt that with a skew. Let's bring some energy into this moment where there's our job is to get somebody to behave differently in the moment, right? Whether that's stop, ideally pick it up and finally purchase, right? We want to do those things that get them to do that. And focus, right? Like a lot like building a whole marketing funnel. We're going to focus on top of funnel. Just stop, look at this thing, pick it up, think it's cool and different and standing out in the moment. And that moment, right, is evolving rapidly and changing. That's why we continually evolve designs and continually evolve packaging. But all that understanding of that takes arguably a lot of data.
So John, how do you coach a brand on how to handle that obstruction that a retailer might say that's against the grain, that's against what the set looks like, that's not what how do you help a
'Cause
brand?
you're dealing with that question.
Yeah,
The question he's getting.
So practically at the ground level, we try to tell the story of what's going on to the retailer, show them what's there, show them why this stands out, show them some of our early, if we're, we'll do some spot studies, some triads, some individual things, show them a little bit of data, if you will, show them how it looks visually and stands out, and push them to say, you got to make a bet, you got to change this a little bit. But generally, right, showing them what it looks like, getting them comfortable with it, showing that you stand by this, or we're putting some money in the market generally helps too.
Well, I think going back to the original conversation around data and what you said earlier on validating with data from a retail standpoint, and I see this really anytime you're selling anything, people don't want to know from a design perspective that it was just a hip check. They want to see all of the data to support it. So what are consumer trends that, what are your consumer trends that you're seeing within your own product, consumption? What are category trends? And then what's happening on the shelf, and why did you choose to go down this path, and can you validate it with both qualitative and quantitative data?
And did you choose
money
to?
and budget, right? So again, going back to some of the startups, like all of that's a lot of work, so how do you do that on a shoestring?
It's an iterative process. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to be moving in the right direction at all times.
All right.
And so I think if you can, I think if you, just to put the, the exclamation point on it, I think if you approach it from a process standpoint and say, we're going to make data-driven decisions, here's the data that we have, here's the data that we want to make a better decision, but here's the output based on, and this is maybe where the gut marries with the data. Here's the data we have, here's the decision that we made based on what we know about the market to be true. Here's the data that we need in order to make a more accurate decision, but here's where we are today. Right? And I think that's a complete picture. And as with anything, you need to acknowledge where your shortcomings are so that you know where you need to go, but validate or also sell the work that you've done, because the work that you've done is still a step in the right direction. And that can't be undersold, because this is all an iterative process. Where we are today is not where we're going to be in a year, and it's certainly not where we were a year ago. Constantly moving forward.
And that motion, I've seen it work, be very appealing part of the sale, that we're willing to move, that we're willing to change, as long as you can tell that story.
Yep.
And say, here's what we want to know.
Yeah. And I think that's the beauty of having good teams and good people, is we all are evolving as we're, like, this is a journey. It's a process. And we want to constantly be making our service offering, product offering better. And you can't do that when you're sitting in place.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to ask, because we all have different experience. Has anyone seen where data and gut are different and gut beats data?
Ooh.
Data beats gut.
I'll give you two examples of my past. One, back in the day, I'm old enough that I can say that now, I feel. They used to do a lot of testing of commercials where in one of the sources that you would do, you go into a theater, these consumers would watch all these commercials. They would be offered a basket of products at the end, and whatever they took, they said that commercial was motivating. I think it was ARS or something testing, right? Now, you have no idea if they had just bought the product before. They're looking by what's the most expensive. That's how it was deemed. Did a commercial for a product, it scored super low. So the client made us revert back to an old commercial, and because the data said the new commercial was bad. We ran it in one test market. They let us do that. Sales in that test market went up, and sales in the other markets where we ran the existing, because it had scored better, went down. So our gut told us the new commercial was better. The data from this set said it was worse. Our gut was right.
I don't think that's what happened there. I think I think you split test something and the data said that it was right. And
no, that's the second test. The first test was just solely, and we had to convince the client to let us do this.
Yeah, no, I understand. I understand. I think you didn't have I think your data set was statistically insignificant after the first test.
I would say that was true.
So I still don't know that the data was wrong there, or that gut won out over data. I think you guys had enough. I think what happened there was the gut was enough of a driver for you to say, okay, we didn't test this the right way, or we did something wrong, or there's something additional that needs to be validated here, so we need to collect more data. But I don't think it's an interesting debate.
It is, right? Yeah. Just because there's a lot of times, and I guess I don't want to denigrate anyone, but where people in my position want to have a data point to say, I made the right decision based on this number, not based on my knowledge, not based on all my gut, not based on the whole picture, but it got tested and there's this number, so it's a yes or no, right? And so there's services that pop up for that to give that, but that's only one data point.
Yeah.
And to our earlier conversation is that, if you're not using any of your gut and you're just using, and that's just a CYA.
But also the reason that you said you felt really good about the commercial initially is because you all watched it and you knew it was emotional. You knew that it hit.
It was.
So you did have other data that you were relying on to make that qualitative decision that you need to test more.
So,
Yes.
so I would say, like, in my almost 30 years in this industry, I've been going through all of these different time periods, and I won't call out the brand, but no, I can't remember a single time where the gut was right and the data was wrong. In fact, they all revert to the opposite. There was a project for a very large company that decided to move away from a colored lid to a clear lid based off a gut and competitive landscape, and it failed and had to quickly respond and quickly react back to the original, because that's what the data supported.
Yeah,
it was a gut decision, right? It was like, nope, this is what we need to do because this is what the competitor's doing. This gives better visual representation of the product, XYZ. Okay, let's do it. And a customer wanted it, which helped validate the gut, and it failed.
Yes.
miserably.
Speaking to decisions made in isolation, specifically based on gut, which is like when I'm referring to a decision based on gut, I'm more so referring to something in the abstract where you have no tangible information about the decision being made, just like kind of worldly knowledge that's guiding a gut decision. If you're making a decision from that place, someone gave me this advice and I can't remember who, but it's been right 100% of the time. If your response to something is this could work, it never works. If it's like this, if
It's a
there's
waffling of it.
yeah,
Like,
if
this
it's
might work.
yeah, if it every time that I've said this might work or this could work, it hasn't worked. And those are decisions that have been made purely based on gut or intuition, rather than using using kind of either qualitative or quantitative data to guide the decision. So when I say some decisions are made on gut, it's not like these are not big decisions. These are not like we're going to change the brand or they're not big decisions. They're like kind of quick things, and sometimes they're guided by very specific applicable knowledge, which are data points
Mm-hmm.
in general. But like gut decisions in isolation, from my experience, typically result in, if it's purely based on gut, result in adverse outcomes.
I can buy that. I do think a lot of gut decisions are made based on a knowledge you've acquired, like I said
Right.
beforehand.
Yeah, and I think
So you've got that as your base so that you're able to, and I think if you build, as we're working towards building a strong brand, so we know the brand foundations, we know a lot of the data, that's all feeding so when we see something, we're like, yeah, that's our brand, that will work, that won't.
Yeah.
But you have to.
But that gut decision is predicated on all the other data points that are funneling into that,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And I think there's a huge difference between saying I feel and I believe.
Yeah.
I feel something is going to work, it's probably not.
Yeah.
If I believe it's going to work,
You're gonna make
it's
it
going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Think, feel, do.
I mean, yeah, I
You
mean,
wanna go on this because you've probably seen a lot of things.
I've seen a few things over time, but again, I think, right, like what Brian said about the gut in isolation is a terrible decision making process, and it is. But like gut decisions, when they are kind of at the edge of data, are the best. Have the chance to be the best decisions because I'm moving out of that comfort zone. I'll give you an example.
So just can we
Yeah.
qualify? This is gut aided decisions, not purely
Gut-enabled?
data enabled gut decisions.
Data-enabled gut decisions.
The gut is filled with data points. They're contextual. They're floating around. You've considered some of them.
You're at the 1 yard line, and do I throw or do I pass? Now it's the gut decision.
I mean, yes, it is. And that's a decision that I think where you can get to greatness, right? So the 1 yard line for this ad campaign was one we did here for a large B2B company. And everything in B2B says, you talk to hundreds of B2B buyers and consumers, they are rational buyers. They want all the data points. They want to make rational decisions. They want a thing to run up to their boss to be the influencer and to be the hero. And there's a lot of truth to that. But knowing all that, right? We ran a campaign. The first campaign was 3 words on each page. Very simple decision making. Go beyond. Do this, and here's why. Highest performing campaign in 30 years of running advertising. Now, right? It wasn't just a gut decision because we thought it was cool. It was, okay, we really understand what the B2B buyers want. We really understand where they're going. But we made a decision to break that pattern in a paradigm in the system, and it worked. That was a gut decision. We didn't have any data that it would work. We knew from consumer sales, we knew that people, make, even though B2B buyers say that they're rational buyers, they still make emotional decisions and buy the people, not the product or software. But still, that was, end of the day, right, up to the 1 yard line, a gut decision that worked in marketing.
Yeah, so I think that John's point comes all the way back around to what Brian was talking about. You can have a phrase I use as paralysis by analysis, right?
Yes.
Where you're using analytics too much to make a decision that you ultimately make the wrong decision. We see that in sporting now. We see that in movies where they say, well, this kid can hit the baseball, Trouble with the Curve. It's a great movie. kid can't hit the curveball. He's never been thrown the curveball. They throw a curveball, he can't hit it, right? So he drops in draft status. So like people focus so much on analytics that they forget to use the art and the science of decision making.
Well,
right?
What's a great point? There's an art and a science.
There's
Yeah.
an art and a
Yeah.
science, and
And-
people want to just focus on the science because
Right.
that's you can control it. But there is an art, and the more you have of the science built in, you get the art of it.
Yeah.
And the more you understand who you are as a brand, as a company, you can start to do a lot more because you can play with that.
They need to be married.
They do. It is a good marriage of it.
Yeah.
And just like a regular marriage, sometimes one wins, sometimes the other wins, right? And then sometimes it's a balance.
Well, I'd say it more, right? The marriage removes bias, right? Because if you're data is data, right? Math is math. It's a core truth. But how we look at
Manipulate data.
Oh,
but-
no, hold on.
Oh.
I can manipulate the perception of data, and I can manipulate how it's read. I can, right, we'll get, Einstein used the observer, right, to step away and to look at data from different perspectives.
That's a great distinction. Yeah, you can manipulate the
Data
perspective
is
of
true.
data, not
Data is
it's objective.
period.
Yeah.
But I can look at it this way and pull these pieces.
100%.
I can pull these, and I can use it.
Right.
And we tend to, as humans, right, we carry lots and lots of biases, intentionally and unintentionally. The art and science, at least in my world, in my crazy mind, helps me remove those biases because they fight. The art challenges this bias, the data challenges this bias that I have on the art side, and then I get a tool, a little personal machine to make better thinking by using it to remove bias. And that's whether you're training kids to look at whatever you can take to remove bias from how you're looking at something is key.
Hard.
Hard as shit.
Hard as
But
shit.
but the instinct and the gut is that barometer on whether or not what you're looking at is maybe manipulated or your perception of it is wrong.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Join us next week where we ask one simple question, take one drink, put your cues in the comments. We'd love to talk about it on the show.
And it's just that simple.